Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shift how you view risk assessments. If you've ever felt like filling out a risk matrix is just some subjective box-ticking exercise, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to position quality risk management, or QRM, exactly where it belongs, as the dynamic, data-driven engine of your contamination control strategy.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll kick things off with QRM as the strategy engine, then we'll move into identifying contamination hazards, review some risk assessment tools, cover objective risk scoring, and finally wrap up with justifying controls and risk. Let's get right into it.
So right off the bat, the crucial point here is that the ICH Q9 standard literally demands that our strategy is built on documented, science-based decisions. It deliberately pushes back against gut feelings, assumptions, or doing things just because, that's how we've always done it. The formality of your risk management absolutely has to match the complexity of the risk itself. You want to deliberately reduce subjectivity. Why? So your risk ratings are consistent, defensible, and ultimately effective at protecting the patient.
And it's so important to remember that the QRM cycle is not just a straight line. It's a continuous loop of assess, control, communicate, and review. This systematic framework is exactly what provides the defensible basis and traceability for every single control you implement across the product lifecycle. Without this engine running in the background, your control strategy is really just a loose collection of procedures.
All right, Section 1, Identifying Contamination Hazards. This is where we find the fuel for our QRM engine. We really need to pin down the specific contamination hazards we're actually trying to control. Now, we really have to anchor our focus on three distinct dimensions of contamination. We aren't just fighting generic dirt or germs here. We are up against three very different enemies: microbial, particulate, and endotoxin. And because they all behave so differently, they require entirely different control approaches.
Breaking these down really reveals why taking a single-dimension view is dangerously incomplete. For example, let's look at endotoxins. Because they're heat-stable pyrogens, they actually survive standard sterilization. So just killing the organism isn't enough. You literally must control the hazard upstream at the water source and through depyrogenation. If your strategy only focuses on microbial kill steps, you've got a massive blind spot.
So, once we know what the hazards actually are, and we know they originate from sources like personnel, equipment, or water, we've got to ask the next critical question. How do they actually reach the critical zone where the product is exposed?
Because, let's face it, contamination doesn't just magically teleport. It travels via very specific routes. The primary ones are contact and transfer, airborne deposition, and ingress past a barrier. To actually stop contamination, you've got to map your sources to these specific routes. So, for example, if personnel are the source, they might introduce microbial hazards through contact or ingress. The golden rule here is simple but incredibly powerful. If you break the route, you break the risk. But how do you actually find these source and route pairings in the real world? Well, I'll tell you what you don't do. You cannot identify hazards sitting in a conference room staring at a diagram, just relying on someone's memory of past events. You literally must walk the actual process on the floor. And you've got to cross-reference that with hard data, mining your environmental monitoring trends, your excursions, and past investigations. Completeness protects the strategy, because unnamed hazards absolutely cannot be controlled.
Moving on to Section 2, Risk Assessment Tools. Now that we have our comprehensive list, we need to process these hazards through our engine using the right analytical tools.
Choosing the right tool is honestly half the battle. You don't need a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and you certainly can't build a house with just a screwdriver, right? Use a risk matrix when you need a high-level portfolio overview to broadly prioritize a lot of risks quickly. But when you need to dissect complex equipment or intricate process risks line by line, looking at specific failure modes and effects, that's when you deploy a tool like FMEA. Match the formality and the tool to the complexity of the risk. By plotting the severity of the harm against the probability of it occurring, a risk matrix provides this highly visual way to establish action bands. You instantly know that your immediate focus, your absolute strongest controls, need to be directed right at that critical, high-severity, high-probability corner. It's just an excellent way to prioritize exactly where your resources need to go first.
Okay, Section 3, Objective Risk Scoring. This is all about calibrating the engine. We need to look at how we objectively score these risks, because if the input data is flawed, well, the output strategy is going to be flawed too.
We absolutely have to avoid letting the loudest voice in the room dictate the scores based on gut feeling. So the crucial point here is grounding these scores in solid definitions and hard data. Severity is all about the patient. How serious is the harm if it occurs? Probability is the likelihood of it happening, and this must be anchored in monitoring history and trend data, not just guesswork. And detectability? That's the likelihood of catching the issue before harm actually occurs. Keep in mind, though, detection is not prevention. A highly detectable hazard is still a hazard.
And this brings us to a massive industry misconception. It's a debate that pops up in risk assessment workshops all the time, and it often severely skews the results if people get it wrong. Does adding a control reduce severity? The answer is a definitive no. Adding a control does not reduce severity. Think about it for a second. A control doesn't make the potential harm to the patient any less serious if the contamination actually gets through. Severity is a property of the hazard itself. What your control actually does is make the event less likely to happen, meaning it reduces the probability. Keeping this distinction crystal clear keeps your scoring honest and consistent. All right, Section 4, Justifying Controls and Risk. Let's see how this all builds into the final output of our QRM engine, justifying the controls we put in place and properly managing the residual risk that's left over. You absolutely must match the strength of the control to the actual level of risk. This is all about proportionality. Under-controlling is obviously bad because it leaves the patient unprotected. But over-controlling a low-level hazard, that's also dangerous. It wastes valuable resources, adds unnecessary manual interventions, which can spawn entirely new microbial risks. And honestly, it can actually obscure the genuinely critical controls you need to be focusing on.
Now, when you finally made these decisions, please don't just file away a final score, like a risk priority number, and call it a day. Two identical scores can mean vastly different things in reality. The true value of this entire exercise lies in documenting the rationale. Record exactly why you chose that score, cite the data you used, state your assumptions, and explain why the control is proportionate. The reasoning is what really matters here.
This right here is the ultimate golden thread. It represents exactly what a mature contamination control strategy looks like. QRM supplies the reasoning, linking your raw sources and routes to specific hazards, which dictate proportionate controls. Those controls require specific monitoring to prove they work, which finally leads to assessed effectiveness. Every single step is linked by documented, objective reasoning.
We really have to face a harsh truth. There is no such thing as zero risk. A credible strategy doesn't falsely claim contamination has been completely erased. Instead, it acknowledges that controls reduce risk, they don't eliminate it. It accepts that residual risk exists, and it actively manages and monitors it.
I'll leave you with this final thought to really challenge how robust the QRM engine powering your strategy truly is. If the person who wrote the risk assessment left the company today, could your documentation stand on its own? Does it capture the why well enough to survive an audit tomorrow? If the answer is no, well, it might be time to get that engine back into the shop. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep verifying, and I'll catch you in the next one.